What's up, everybody? This is Cody, aka GFS Prodigy, coming to you live with FTN's one and only Jonathan Kelley, breaking down this UFC slate. How's it going, man?
I'm doing good, man. Definitely excited to be on your show. Thanks for having me on, and really excited for the three fight cards coming up in 8 days after such
Right.
a long layoff. I'm ready to get after it, man.
Right. So basically, what we do is normal. We just kind of go fight by fight, breaking it down on Draftkings, give you all a couple betting picks here and there, who we like, who we don't like, so on and so forth. So starting on the main event, we have Calvin Keator versus Max Holloway. Give us your first thoughts on this main event fight.
Yeah, so this is going to be a fun one. It's kind of funny. I was just not arguing, but me and Jonah over at FTN, we're usually like in similar viewpoints on a lot of matchups. This one we're actually on opposite sides. I like the Calvin Keator side, and it's kind of interesting because I've been backing Max Holloway for a long time now. But this is one in terms of the matchup. I actually do think Keator can give him some problems because I think. There's a couple things going in his favor. One, I think Volkanovski sort of laid the blueprint on how to beat Max Holloway, a heavy leg kick approach, try to match him in volume. And I do think that those are things that Keator can do. Keator does have an underrated kicking game. He just doesn't use it a whole lot. And the thing about his corner and his camp is they're usually coming with a very smart game plan. So I would be surprised if we don't see like at least a heavy leg kick approach relative to Keator's last couple fights. But also I think Keator can almost match Holloway's volume. And I think Keator has more power, so he could land the more impactful shots. So whereas he might get outpointed a little bit on the volume, I think especially if he beats up the leg and lands a couple more impactful shots, I think he can win rounds. So I actually like the Keator side here. I bet him for a unit at plus 144, still hovering around that number on most books. In terms of DraftKings, you got the pricing pulled up here. I think Keator, it's going to be hard for me not to have like Calvin Keator as my most owned fighter on the slate just because he's so cheap. But what are you thinking in this matchup?
Yeah, we're actually on the same page. As soon as I saw Calvin Keator's price when this slate first popped up at 7,300 and Max Holloway 8,900, I was surprised. I thought it was going to be much closer. I figured it would be like 8,900 to 8,500 for both of these guys. I was surprised at that 7,300 price tag, to say the least. I think you said it well. I think Keator has the power advantage. I think he's going to come in swinging compared to Holloway, who I don't think is going to be on the defensive end with Calvin Keator's game plan. I think Keator's a different sort of guy and coming into this fight. I think he's more prepared in this fight. And I'm just liking his striking, to say the least. I think it's way sneakier than Holloway's. I think Keator's going to come in swinging, like I said, and winning this fight, to say the least. Especially with that price tag, 7,300, he'll be a main building block on my lines. And especially because you want to have the main event in on most DraftKings slates, I'm loving Calvin Keator at a 7,300 price tag, to say the least.
Yeah, I think the last thing too that I'll say about this fight is, we saw it with Elevation Fight Team last year. Like when your camp is clicking, it just rubs off on everybody. And we're sort of seeing that with like the Boston Cartel guys with Randy Costa getting a couple big knockout wins. We saw how good Rob Font looked after the layoff against Marlon Moraes his last time out. And Calvin Keator looked good last year too. So it's like, I just feel like their camp's clicking. I'm a Keator fanboy, so I'm backing Calvin Keator in this spot.
Yeah, me and you are on the same page with this fight. I don't like Max Holloway in this fight, especially paying up for that price tag. I'm on the Calvin Keator side. And like I said, he's definitely going to be a building block in most of my lineups that I'm going to play on the slate, to say the least. I'm all in on Calvin Keator on this fight. Moving on to the co-main event. What are your first thoughts on the co-main event, man?
Which one is it? The Amiv? Is this the co-main?
Amiv, I think, is going to be the co-main now.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if they switched up the order because I thought it was the Conde Brown one. But Ramazan Amiv is just like, he's just a dude that I'm never really looking to back. He's a low volume fighter. If you pull up, I think you can pull up his game logs here. You'll see he's just he doesn't score well for DraftKings. Like he's just not a good DraftKings play. So whereas he trains out of a good camp, American Top Team, he usually has a pretty smart fight IQ. He's not he's never really somebody that I'm actually looking to actively bet against. I tried to bet against him with Nicholas Stolze his last time out. Didn't work out, but it's just one of those things where he doesn't do enough for me. He doesn't throw enough. You have his game logs here, like 82. That was like the most he's scored. And they actually updated, DraftKings updated the game logs to where now that it matches the new scoring format. So it was actually less than this before they updated the new scoring. And the only reason it reached 82 was because he had so much control time. But even with, 8 minutes of control time, he's scoring 82 DraftKings points. He's 9,200. Like, that's not going to do it for us here. And I doubt he even has that much control against Zawada, who is kind of sneaky off his back. He's coming off the triangle upset over Ubakar Nurmagomedov his last time out. So, I think Ameev wins, but historically I'm pretty low on him. I just don't think in terms of DraftKings, I think there's just better plays on this slate.
Yeah, I think the price tag is kind of pushing me off of him. I think Zawada has a better chance of grappling in this fight, getting you the points if you needed a low-owned punt option. I think he can get you there with the points. But other than that, this is really not a fight I'm targeting, to say the least. I'd much rather, if I had to, pay up for Max Holloway at the 8,900 price tag than 9,200 for Ameev. Ameev is just not a guy I'm getting to. I mean, he looked good, yes, in the last fight, but I'm not on either one of these guys. Like I said, if you want a punt option in Zawada for the grappling, to say the least, I mean, he got you 95 points last fight. If you want to go with him thinking he can get the sub, I don't mind it. But like I said, I'm just not on this fight, to say the least. I'm not really looking at much in this fight at all. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much same boat. I guess you can target the underdog. If you don't think Ameev can get there, you can take a high leverage approach and go with him. But it's tough, because Ameev's never been submitted in his career. So it's like, it's one of those things where how does Zawada really win here? And I just don't see it. So I think Ameev wins a low scoring decision. So for that reason, I'm probably just fading this fight altogether.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm pretty much just marking this fight off the board for me. I'd rather get to other places. Let's go to the heavyweight fight in Tafa versus Felipe. Tell me your first thoughts on this heavyweight fight.
Yeah, so I actually like this fight a lot in terms of DraftKings. We have two heavyweight boxers here. I think Justin Tafa is actually getting slept on a little bit here. I did back him in the betting markets, have a prop on him over at ftnbets.com. So go check that out if you're interested. But I do think he has underrated boxing skills. I do think he's the better boxer in this matchup. I think he has big time power. All of his wins have come by knockout. And it's just one of those things where I think Felipe is being a little bit overrated in this spot, coming off the decision win over Yorgan De Castro. But De Castro really hasn't looked good lately either. Lost to Greg Hardy and then just totally gassed out against Carlos Felipe. So I think Tafa's a better boxer. I just think the money line's wide. I think the DraftKings pricing is wide. So I'm going to be much heavier on the underdog at 7,600. What about you?
Yeah, I like the power in Tafa, and I think that the cardio for Felipe is questionable. That's where I think this fight goes, is that cardio. I think Tafa has the better cardio, plain and simple. And that's what you need in a heavyweight matchup, is that cardio. And if this pushes second round, third round, Felipe is not going to make it, in my mind. I don't think he can push that far. I think Tafa is the better striker, more heavyweight hands. I like him all around in this fight. And that price tag is intriguing to me. I love the 7,600 price tag. You need a mid-range guy. Give me Tafa right in the mid-range, and I love this play, to say the least. I like this fight a ton. Like you said, I can't wait to watch for it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, hopefully we get a knockout from Justin Tafa. It'll be a pretty good night for me. I'm assuming I'm going to be pretty overweight to him. But you mentioned the cardio. I think you're right. I think Felipe's cardio is overrated, just because he had better cardio than De Castro. I still think it's questionable. We saw him gas out against Sergey Spivak the fight before that. And Tafa, it's really just a question mark because we haven't had to see him go 3 rounds. So we don't know because he's never been there. So he's a question mark too, but I kind of lean towards your side in that I think Felipe's cardio is pretty suspect, and Tafa's might be too, but at least I'm getting the guy with more knockout upside, in my opinion.
And in the striking battle between the two, I think Tafa wins in a heartbeat. If this goes to a striking battle, I think Tafa can knock him out, like you said. I think
Agreed.
That's where I'm looking for, is the knockout in Tafa. Brown and Condit. Talk to me about this fight coming in.
Yeah, so this one is going to be a fun one. We have two, some would say legends of the sport here in Carlos Condit and Matt Brown, both kind of over the hill at this point. Matt Brown, 40 years old. I think Condit's 36. And these guys have been in the UFC for forever. It's no secret. They fought everybody and anybody, and now they're going to fight each other. So it's going to be one that I think they want to put on a show for the fans, but also they both have been finished a lot. Like of their 83 combined, I think it's 83 combined bouts professionally, only 15 have gone to decision. And I just really think Condit probably gets a finish here. I do have a play on this one as well in the prop market over at ftnbets.com. I'm expecting a finish. I think it comes on the Condit side. Matt Brown, not only is he the older of the two, but I also think he's the less durable of the two. His last 3 losses have come by knockout. I think both guys could potentially submit each other, but I trust Condit's cardio more. I trust his chin more, and I actually trust his skills more as well. So I'm on the favorite on this one in Carlos Condit. Tell me if I'm crazy.
So basically I'm liking the streak of Condit. I'm thinking that he's going to keep riding the streak. He's looked good the past couple fights. Basically, the price tag is a little off to me. I don't like that 8,700 price tag. That's a little high to me, and I wish it was a little bit lower. But Condit, in my mind, I think he's going to come into this fight looking better than Matt Brown. This is basically, like you said, 2 experienced fighters, so-called legends, if you want to call them legends. Basically, Brown is quick on his feet, but I think Condit can sneak in that grappling high upside and get you the grappling win, to say the least. I'm on the side of Condit easily in this fight. I'm not really looking at Matt Brown in any case. I'm on the Condit side coming into this fight.
Yeah, I think the only way that Brown really wins here is maybe he lands something heavy, but Condit has been really durable over the course of his career. We've seen him rocked a couple times, but he's never really been knocked out. He was technically TKO'd to leg kicks years back, but he's never been like knocked out. So I definitely trust his chin a lot more than Brown. And I really kind of see that as Brown's only path to victory, because if he does try to wrestle with Condit, I think he's just going to gas out even quicker. So I'm with you. I like the Condit side. And on a slate where we don't have a lot of like safe, expensive guys, I feel like I'm going to be pretty exposed to Condit, even at an expensive price tag of 8,700, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I just don't think – I think if this fight goes to the second or third round, Matt Brown's going to gas out. This is all about the gas tank to me. I think Condit, like with the grappling high upside, the past few fights, he's looked good. He's looked a lot better than usual his experience there. So I'm on the Condit side, to say the least, against Matt Brown. Going into this next fight, we have the Leech. So talk to me about this fight.
Yeah, so this is another one that I think it's kind of funny. Last time we saw Ponzinibbio was like 26 months ago or something like that against Neil Magny. So yeah, he's a super long layoff, which is always kind of concerning. But where it's interesting to me is like Ponzinibbio was like that dude. Like he was on the rise before the long layoff. So now at 34 years old, he has a really small window to get back to the top of this division. The UFC took him out of the rankings completely after the long layoff. He battled a couple injuries. I believe he had a blood infection as well. So he's been out for a while, but he looked great in that Neil Magny fight. Neil Magny obviously has looked great since then too. So that just makes that win look even more impressive. And the streak that he was on, he beat Mike Perry back when it was actually still notable to beat Mike Perry. And
Mike Perry now.
Yeah, now Mike Perry just beats himself up on Instagram and stuff like that. But yeah. So the Nelson fight, the first round knockout, like I just think Ponzinibbio from a skill set standpoint, he's a BJJ black belt. He's got knockout power, likes to stand and trade. I think he's for sure got the advantage, but I'm also not completely sleeping on Jinglang Li, even though, Neil Magny kind of wrestle fucked him the entire time in his last fight. And he was a decent sized favorite. I backed him in that spot. It ended up burning me. I do still think he's somewhat skilled as well. he's a halfway decent striker. He's a BJJ black belt as well. But I do like the Ponzinibbio side. I'm just worried, I guess, about the ring rust a little bit, if there is any. But I do think Ponzinibbio understands that if he's going to make a run towards the top of this division again, then it needs to come now, because he doesn't have much time in terms of his fight career. But what do you think?
See, that's where I'm wondering also. I think you can either go with the route of Pons basically looks good. He's ready for this fight. He's going to come into this fight high energy, high ready to go. Basically, there's not going to show any rust. And because he's the more skilled fighter, I like his side. I'm on him personally. I like him a ton. It's just, like I said, it's 50-50 with him. He's either going to come in high energy, ready to go, no rust at all, or there's going to be rust, and he's not ready for this fight. He's not going to be ready for the leech, basically, and the leech is going to, his more slow, high energy and fights with the leg kicks and stuff like that, he's going to come into this fight winning. But I'm more so on the pawn side where, like I said in the beginning, the skill is there for him. We've seen him fight top contenders. I mean, the streak he was on against Neil Magny, I mean, he looked amazing. So if he comes into the mindset, the time is now, the time is like he needs to win now, I think he's going to win this fight, to say the least. So that's the side I'm on, to basically is that 9,300 price tag on pawns. Do you have any closing thoughts on this fight, man?
The only other thing I'll say is, like, on a slate on DraftKings where we don't have a lot of like upper 9K guys that we talked about trying to fade Amiv because he just not going to do it at that price. Somebody else Buckley, who we'll get to, comes to mind if he doesn't get a finish. There's a lot of 9K guys that I think can underwhelm relative to their DraftKings price. I think Ponzinibbio at least has a shot to be head and shoulders above those others in his price range. So I like Ponzi a little bit here.
And the skill is there for him to win this fight quickly. I mean, he can definitely do this fight and win this, basically get you a ton of points with that first round knockout if you can do it. It's just that rust that I'm tad a bit worried about. But like you said, the price tag, there's not many options up top that I would rather go to. I'd rather go to pawns in this fight.
Yep.
Going on to Buckley. Talk to me about this fight, man. At 9,400 with Buckley.
Yeah, so I sort of hinted at it. This is one where I think if Buckley doesn't get that early finish, then he's probably busting his price tag. I do think he wins. I think he probably wins a decision, was my official prediction in my article over at ftndaily.com. Dprodiogy is just a guy who's similar to Amiv. He's a low volume striker. He's an okay wrestler, but he doesn't wrestle enough. Like, he's just a low volume guy all around. Like, look at his, even in wins, like, he's not cracking 80. And he's really not winning that much either. So it's like, it's one of those things where I think Buckley could win a decision here just by landing more volume, landing the bigger shots, potentially getting a finish. But Dprodiogy's been pretty durable. So I actually think this one goes the distance. So I think Buckley wins, probably scores like 70 or so. And at 9,400, it's just not going to do it for me. So are you higher on Buckley than I am?
Not really. I'm basically on a first round knockout or bust with Buckley, in my opinion. This is basically what his upside is. If he can get you the first round knockout against Keator, then I'm on him. But I don't think he will, based on the durability of him. Basically, this is all about the power. If he can out-punch, out-strike Keator, then I think he can do it. But I don't think he can go do that in the first round. I think this is going to be a more so second or third round fight. I'm not on that price tag of Buckley. I'd much rather get to Pons than Buckley, to say the least. I'm not really on either guy on this fight. This is another scratch-off fight to me.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point on, he's priced right next to Ponzinibbio, who it sounds like we both like at least a decent amount.
Yeah.
So, that's just an easy pivot for me to just go away from Buckley and pay for Ponzi at 9,300 and save $100.
And also the thing is, the ownership on Buckley is going to be pretty high based on the knockout of Impa. I think everybody's going to see the name. They're going to see the knockout of the year in Buckley and going to flock to him at that price tag. That's right. I'm going to be off of him. That's where I'm going to pivot to Pons, where I'm just going to love the ownership on Pons, to say the least. They're going to look at the name value in the leech in Buckley and flock to them, but I'm not on that train whatsoever. I'm trying to stay off of it. I'd rather just pivot to Pons than go to Buckley. So
yeah, that's a good point too, especially with the two knockouts in a row for Buckley. Now everybody just is going to think he's going to go in there and knock everybody out. But
yeah.
I'd be surprised if Dprodiogy just gets flatlined in the first round here.
Agreed. Talk to me about this next fight, man.
Yeah, we have two undefeated prospects, Dusko Tonorovich and Punahil Soriano. I'm kind of a Soriano guy. I liked him on Contender Series, fought Jamie Pickett. That was a really fun Dana White Contender Series fight. If you haven't watched that, I highly suggest going back and watching that one. And then he comes out in his debut against Oscar Pichota. And not only does he knock him out in the first round, but he also got us 2 knockdowns, which we know are 10 points each on DraftKings. So he absolutely broke the slate. You have it pulled up there, 128 points, and that's based on the new scoring system. I think it was actually higher in the old scoring system because of the significant strikes being 0.1 higher, because I think he was like 135 or something on the old scoring system. But yeah, he's a heavy-handed southpaw. He's got a really heavy left hand, a left straight that he throws with super bad intentions. And Dusko, I think he's good. He showed he's well-rounded. Another Dana White Contender Series product. Looked good against Daquan Townsend, but let's be honest, it's Daquan Townsend. Yeah. If he didn't look good against Townsend, then I'd be a little bit concerned. I do think Tonorovich is probably the rightful favorite here. He's like a minus 155 favorite, I think, to come back on Soriano's plus 135. So we are getting a little bit of odds value on Soriano at 7,700 on DraftKings. I do think he has more knockout upside. So if you're thinking you might want to try and get lucky on the 60-second win for the 25-point bonus with the new DraftKings scoring, I think Soriano could potentially do that. Dusko has shown he's been hittable in the past, keeps his chin really high, and just does some things at range that are a little bit questionable when facing a guy who has as much power as Soriano has. So it's one of those things where I think Dusko's the rightful favorite here, but I'm sort of just hoping that Soriano lands that big shot, because I think I'm going to have more of Soriano on DraftKings. What about you, Cody?
Dude, also the good point where you're looking at is Tonorovich, basically his hands are lowered at all times. Soriano can easily clip him and knock him out in that 6-second span. I think he can easily knock him out and get you that bonus points because of the defense of Tonorovich. I don't like his defense at all. He faced Townsend, who like you said, it's Townsend. If he didn't look good, then that would be another issue. Then I'll be heavier on Soriano if I could be over 100%. I'm just liking the upside of the bomber in Soriano. I think he can easily clip him. I think the defense of Tonorovich will stand out, and it will be noticeable how low his defense is. And I'm taking the set of Soriano as the underdog in this fight. I'm liking it a ton, basically in order to clip him and win this fight. So talk to me about Phil Hawes and tell me why I shouldn't be liking him a little bit.
Yeah, Phil Hawes is a guy who has kind of had an underwhelming career, even though it's been a short professional career, but they brought him on Ultimate Fighter. He wrestled with John Jones at Iowa, Colby Covington. He was an All-American wrestler, junior college in Iowa, and just a specimen. Alonzo Menafield comes to mind. He might actually be in better shape than Alonzo Menafield. The dude's absolutely jacked, just a massive guy, tons of power. But they bring him on Ultimate Fighter, loses to Andrew Sanchez, which I actually kind of like Andrew Sanchez, so not knocking him there. But it was the way that he lost. Outside of the first few minutes of Phil Hawes fights, he's really got cardio issues. And if you're anybody that can take a decent punch and have decent cardio, then you're probably going to take over in rounds 2 and 3 if it lasts that long. And I think Nasruddin Imavov is kind of that guy that fits that build. And this is another situation where the underdog has taken a lot of money in the betting markets to where now Imavov is almost, I think Phil Hawes is a minus 130 favorite right now, but he's priced as like a 2-to-1 favorite. So you're getting some odds value on Imavov here at 7,400. So I think Imavov is probably going to be one of the most owned plays on the slate. I'm not sure I totally agree with that, even though I do think, like I said, if he can survive round 1, he can take over late. But I also think that there's a chance that power of Phil Hawes, where he does just finish in round 1 and he does look good in round 1. So it's a potential live betting spot that I think you can look at if looking to bet the fight. Hawes looks good early, but then kind of fades, then maybe hop on Imavov live. But in terms of DraftKings, I'm going to have shares of both fighters. You know, I usually play anywhere from like 20 to 35 lineups. So I usually try to, on fights like this, where I think there's a high volatile outcome, there's just high variance outcomes in fights like this. I like to target both sides with a lean towards who I like. So maybe I'll have a lean towards Imavov, but I'm definitely going to have some Hawes exposure in case he does get that early finish. What about you?
See, that's where I'm torn between the two guys. I can see Imavov win this fight if he's accurate. If we see the old Phil Hawes basically where on the Ultimate Fighter where he didn't look too great. If we see Imavov basically come in striking accurate with the powerful punches, he can out grapple Hawes and get him on the mat and win this fight. I can definitely see it happening. And at that price tag, that could easily pay off for you. He could easily get that price tag payoff and look good. But at the same time, Phil Hawes, we know the specimen. We've seen him in the past. I mean, he's literally looked pretty good the last couple fights. And at the price tag that he's on, we need another guy in that 8K sort of range. I don't mind taking a shot at Phil Hawes. And I don't mind taking him basically out clipping Imavov and winning this fight and basically proving all the doubters wrong that he's still in the game. So if he has the mentality where he's not done, he wants to still fight in this UFC, I think he's going to come out swinging and wanting to win this fight and proving the doubters wrong and winning this. So it's going to be a close kind of 60-40 for me with a 60 of Phil Hawes and a 40 of Imavov. So I'm just kind of on the train where I like both sides of this fight, to say the least.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the biggest concern with Hawes is like, yeah, he's getting a string of first round knockouts here. You know, only one in the UFC against Jacob Malkoun, who's kind of just a bum. You know, Robert Whittaker's training partner came in on short notice, and Hawes just absolutely flatlined him. But even before that, on the regional scene, it's lower level competition. And then when he's had a step up, like the Ultimate Fighter or on Dana White's Contender Series, he just quite didn't get there. So it'll be interesting to see how he stacks up against a decent competition in Imavov. So I'm with you. I'll target both sides, but I've definitely got my eyes on this one. It should be a fun fight.
Agreed. So I haven't had time to dig into this next fight in Edwards and Yanan. So talk to me about this fight, man, and give your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, so this was originally supposed to be Yanan Wu versus Betcha Kohea, who had to pull out due to injury. So then they were bringing in Jocelyn Edwards, making her UFC debut on short notice, previously trained with the Shevchenko sisters. So I think that's why she's getting a lot of buzz here. Trained at King's MMA over there with Sabina Mazo, formerly Henry Cejudo, and other people. You know, she's been around the fight game. So I think that's why she's kind of getting a lot of love here. But in terms of her footage on tape, you know, she's fighting a lot of low level competition. She's coming off a first round body kick knockout, which lasted about 30 seconds against a fighter on like the Panama regional scene who was like 3-6 or something like that. Like it's just really low level stuff. But I also don't want to completely discredit it because she does have some striking skills. It's just one of those things where I think we need to see her against better competition. She went 5 rounds with Sarah Alpar and kind of got just out wrestled and lost a split decision. On the flip side, Wu Yanan, I actually think is a little bit underrated here. Edwards has taken some money in the betting markets. This fight is now basically a pick'em, but I actually do think I like the Yanan side just because we've seen her win at the UFC level, but also, you know, she's still young. She's 24 years old. She's making improvements each time out. You know, her last fight against Mizuki Inoue, I always mess up her name, but she outstruck her in every single round and still lost a decision. Like, I thought she won the fight. It was a close fight. I thought she won it, but she also just looked better, you know, outside of just being backed up against the cage. Her striking does look like it's improving. She's very long for this division. It's just one that I think is going to be a low-level women's MMA fight, striking match that could probably go either way, but I'm definitely siding with the more experienced Wu Yanan here.
Exactly. Moving on to the Melo and Morales side. So this is just a decent fight in my mind. That price tag for Mraz is a little high to me. She hasn't really fought the greatest fighters. The resume is not really there for me. I mean, if you look at her past fights, Eubanks, I mean, it's just not the greatest of the fights. If we look at the card, I mean, 26 points, 19 points, 31 points in her losses. I don't really like this side of her. I'd rather go to a girl like Mello. I think the upside, I think she's the underdog. I think she has better upside in this fight. Talk to me a little bit about this fight.
Yeah, I think this is another low-level women's MMA. Both of these gals probably shouldn't be in the UFC and probably won't be in the UFC if whoever loses here. This is probably what they call a pink slip fight, winner go home type deal. So Vanessa Melo's 0-3 in the UFC. She's actually missed weight in all 3 of her fights. Last time she missed weight by like 5 pounds or something like that. I told my buddy Jonah over at FTN that I'll bet anybody who wants it that Vanessa Melo misses weight here. So keep an eye on the scales tomorrow to see. But I mean, she's yet to make weight in the UFC, and I think I believe she had a problem with that prior to the UFC as well. But Sarah Moraz, she's missed weight before too, so it's kind of funny that they're fighting each other. But I agree with you. I think it's a super expensive price tag for Sarah Moraz, who is a low volume fighter, doesn't wrestle a ton, even though I think she could have a wrestling advantage here. I think it's a close fight. I think Moraz is probably the favorite here, but I do think the line's wide. I think Vanessa Melo, if I am going to target this fight at all, which I'm probably not at all. Yeah, if I do, it's going to be very little, and it'll be on the Melo side, like you said. So I like the underdog call that you had on Vanessa Melo, if you are going to.
Yeah. If you want to punt it at 7,100, if she's the last piece of your lineup that you have to fit in somebody at that price tag, go for it. But yeah, I'm not going to force her way into my line. That's not happening. This fight is just more of a cross-off fight. I mean, the 6-7 record for a 9,100 fighter in Morales, who, like I said, the resume is awful and probably going to go home if she doesn't win this fight. I'm not on either girl in this fight. This is not happening for me, to say the least. Another fight that 2 fighters who are just not really looking the greatest in Ligo and Kilburn. Talk to me about this first fight, man.
Yeah, you hit on it. Both guys didn't look good in their UFC debut. I think for Austin Lingo, at least it was just more of a matchup, just a really bad matchup for him in Yusuf Zalil, who we know is like a super mobile dude, like super fast. The speed advantage in that fight was super evident. Lingo was just a step behind, couldn't cut off the cage. He was just kind of chasing him the entire time. And when he did catch up to Zalil, he was just getting jabbed to death. Zalil split his nose pretty good in that fight. And then he took him down 7 times. So that was an issue. But like I said, I think it was more of a matchup thing. Lingo's known as a knockout guy. And on the flip side, so's Jacob Kilburn. And he sort of just got dominated by Billy Quarantillo, who had his way with him. He didn't land like anything, got out wrestled, out grappled, and then choked out. So he didn't show us much either, but he's more of a striker by nature. I think both of these guys are going to give a better account of themselves this time around. So I am expecting to see a better version of both guys, but I do favor the favorite in Austin Lingo. I think he's a better striker. I think he has more power. And I think the fight IQ and the cardio of Jacob Kilburn is kind of a bigger deal than maybe people think. In that fight against Billy Q, even after 1 round, he was completely gassed. And I know Billy Q puts on a big pace, but it was a red flag for me. And then in between rounds, he's asking his coaches, like, what strikes do I throw? And they tell him like a straight right, and he comes out and throws a body kick and gets taken down again. Like, it's just poor fight IQ. He's young. He has power. I'm not writing him off completely, but I do think Austin lights out Lingo probably gets the knockout here. What about you?
See, that's where I was going to mention also is the mentality of Kilburn. That's where I'm questioning this whole entire fight with him. I'm not going to play him. I'm rounding him off because of that fight IQ. If you have to ask your coach what you should do in that fight, what punches should I throw, I'm not liking that at all. That's another step where, in my mind, the mentality is not there for him when he's facing Lingo, who at least pushed the pace in the Zalal fight. You could tell that he was at least trying to push it up and trying to figure out what he should do and not look like Kilburn, to say the least. The power in Lingo is there. The striking is there for him. Yes, he did not look good in that fight. The matchup was awful for him. He's on a losing streak, but I think he finally bounces back in a big way in this Kilburn fight. I think Lingo takes this fight with ease, and I think he knocks him out, to say the least. And I think Kilburn's chalking up another loss, in my opinion, to say the least. So that pretty much wraps up that for us. Do you have any last closing thoughts before we head out of here, man?
No, I would say that was pretty good. I think if you're playing the slate on DraftKings, I would say this is going to be an underdog heavy type of a card. Yeah. Just for a couple of the reasons we laid out here. I think if you're targeting guys in the expensive range, I think we both kind of like Lingo. We both kind of like Ponzinibbio. And then you're sort of mixing in these underdogs like Tafa, like Imavov, and some of these other fighters that I think Calvin Keator in the main event, obviously. And basically the goal is just to have a live bullet come the main event. But I definitely appreciate you having me on your show, Cody. And if anybody wants to hear more of my content or read more of my content, go ahead and check out ftndaily.com, ftnbets.com. And we actually have a new-ish podcast over on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, basically anywhere you can stream any type of podcast. It's called Undisputed MMA. So be sure to check that out. It's totally free.
Awesome, man. Yeah, it was pretty fun to have you on. It's nice to have another person's opinion on these fights. It's nice to just kind of bounce back some ideas here and there and get your thoughts on this fight. I think you're on the same page. Basically, you're going to need a live dog to pull out the DraftKings win. I'm locking and loading Calvin Keator in that main event. I like that price tag a lot. Just kind of sprinkle in the 8K guys, 7K guys, and basically the studs are pretty much clear cut in my opinion, to say the least. So I'm liking this card a lot. I can't wait to watch this card. Then we have another one literally within the 8-day span. So it's going to be a pretty fun few weeks for me, and it's nice basically chatting it up with you, man, and nice having you on the show. Thanks a lot for coming on with me, and it was nice talking to you, bro.
Yeah, anytime, man. Good luck on Saturday.
Thank you, man. So basically, hey guys, hit the like button for me. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. That helps me a ton. Go check out Jonathan Kelley on FTN Fantasy. You can easily just type in FTN Fantasy. That's what you do. That's what I do every single day to check out the articles and go from there, guys. It's great content. I like it a ton. And definitely check out Jonathan Kelley with the UFC bets. So again, guys, see ya and have a great and safe rest of your day. Have a good one, everybody.